Hi guys, this is Ignorance is Bliss. I'm Farah.
I'm Hodan.
I'm Lisa.
And today we are going to be discussing feminism. So we're going to start off with Hodan, and she's going to explain what feminism means to her.
And for me, feminism is about women's equality, but it's all about legal reform. So trying to make sure that women have the exact same rights as men, but legally. And that's the particular issue I'm concerned and worried about, issues of, say, domestic violence, but also issues of, equal pay, sex discrimination and things of that nature. So for me, feminism is literally about legal reform. Making sure women have the same rights as men and making sure that that is stipulated by law.
So are you a feminist?
Yes, I am. There's a bit of a pause there. Yes, I am. It's interesting because for me, I'm not necessarily shouting about it, but I definitely do believe in women's equality. Of course, I'd be stupid not to. I'm a woman, and I care about having the same rights as men. Of course I do. If I had to identify as a type of feminist, and I know I sound like I'm being forced here, but I'm not, I'd say I'm a liberal feminist because for me it's about legal reform. It's about making sure women legally have the same rights as men. That's, for me, rights at work, equal pay. I'd say that's where I place myself. Yeah.
This might throw a spanner in the works
Go on.
because you said same rights.
Yeah.
But we are different, aren't we? How can we have the same rights?
Mm-hmm.
If there was a list of rights for men and a list of rights for women, how can we are biologically different, how can we have the exact same rights?
I think for me, that's why I consider myself a liberal feminist, because the focus for me is on things that men and women both do. Okay. So work, for instance, and that's why I said legal reform and protection through legal reform. So for me, it's about things like equal pay.
Because I'm just aware that lots of people might be, when they hear that word, we need to have the same rights, they might think, but we can't have the same rights because we are different.
But you mean things like electoral equality,
absolutely, political equality, representation, things like that. That's not to say I take away from the other issues and don't find them important, but for me, it's about legal reform, protecting women through legal reform.
Got it.
Okay, what does feminism mean to you?
To me, feminism is about standing up for what's right, and making sure that women, in all the ways we can be, have equal access to different opportunities. So like in the workplace, getting equal pay for equal work, and also reducing the gender pay gap because of kind of maternity leave and the effect that has on women. And also for me, a big part of it for feminism in the West and in the UK is about attitudes. I think obviously laws and stuff are different in different parts of the world, but I think in the UK we've still got a long way to go in terms of attitudes and the way we judge women differently in society.
But I think those attitudes are reflected in the law. I think the two connect together. So for example, you touched on maternity and paternity leave. We know in the UK a female gets, I think it's about 52 weeks off, whereas a male gets 2 weeks off. So those attitudes are then trickled down into society. So in the media, you see a female's role as nurturing, looks after the child, etc. The man goes out and works. So I think it's important for legal reform, because then that should hopefully trickle down and it might start changing society's attitude.
That's a very good point.
Or do you think the other way around? So attitudes trickle up and change legislation and law?
I think so.
Both. To be fair, I think we can go both ways. But I do think it's top down more in terms of those attitudes we have in society come from legislation. Absolutely.
And I can think of, just when you're talking two concrete examples, think about smoking. And the when the law was passed that you could no longer smoke inside, the change in attitude
overnight.
That didn't take long. The other example that I can think of is the 5p charge for using plastic bags. People will look everywhere in their bag, in their pocket. They will carry things in their hands like this because they don't want to pay 5p for a plastic bag.
And it's made. You know, that's called. There's a term for that. Sorry, that's just going to say there's a term for that. It's called social cryptomnesia. It's the idea that when social change happens, it happens very quickly, and people know that changes happen, but they can't remember when the change happened. So if we think about smoking and the 5p bag, paying 5 pence for a bag, we know that it happened, and we kind of know about when it happened because obviously it was very recent, but it almost the change was overnight. So
I think you're like making reference to a very good point there when you're saying that legislation does affect attitudes.
Yeah, because now people are hyper aware when it comes to the environment, right? Because it's 5p. It's not. I wouldn't say it's the fact that they want to carry everything because they don't want to spend 5p in a bag. It's more so because they're actually aware of the issues with plastic, etc. Same with smoking in a car. You're now hyper aware of the damage that can cause a child, right?
How far do we think legislation, because I just talked about legal reform, but how far do we think legal reform actually makes a difference? I'm just thinking of the Equal Pay Act and the Sex Discrimination Act 1965 and 1970. We still know that there's inequality in pay. So I know you guys were saying that laws trickle down and change society's attitudes, but what about where we already have laws and there's ways that have been found around it? Because that happens, doesn't it? It happens. It happens. I think it's difficult to answer that on the spot, isn't it? Because the intentions are there. Yeah. The law has tried to secure.
But we know organisations are working around the law and they're still discriminating women legally.
Yes. So it's a work in progress. Yeah. It's even with the law, that's not foolproof. It's not bulletproof, is it?
I wonder whether that's got anything to do with people in positions of power and manipulating the system and working around the system
and looking at it from their own interest. And we know there's more men in power than there are women. As CEOs, whatever it might be. So that just might be it. Everybody looks out for their own interest.
Absolutely.
And that's not to say that if you had a woman CEO that she wouldn't also try and get around the same.
That's true. That's
you know, because not every woman is a feminist, as we all know, or would identify as a feminist, and some men would, and obviously other men wouldn't. So we're not trying to say that all women think the same here, and that if we have a woman CEO, if we've got representation, just because we have more women CEOs, it means these things are going to change.
Yeah. Absolutely,
but it might help.
Yeah, we've talked about this before, and I do consider myself a feminist in the sense that obviously I care about women's equality, and I've just talked about legal reform. But do I necessarily go around saying that I'm a feminist? Probably not. And I think that doesn't make me any less of an advocate for women's rights. I think, whereas I think some people are much more open and loud about being a feminist, and I think we've got to be really careful because there are women who care about the cause who aren't necessarily shouting about it.
But for me that's interesting, because why would you not say loud and proud that you are a feminist?
Yeah, if somebody asked me and it came out in conversation, I'd say I believe in women's rights, and that would make me a feminist. It's just
but
not
that would make me a feminist, not I am a feminist.
That's interesting, see? That is interesting.
So by default you're a feminist.
So I care about women's rights and I want equality, so that makes me a feminist. Yeah. But I wouldn't necessarily say I am a feminist. Now I can say it, I am a feminist. Yeah. But you're right, when I think about the term, I think about my views make me a feminist. Yeah. That's not necessarily me saying I am one.
That is so interesting for me. I've had so many conversations with women that are like, no, I'm not a feminist. Yeah. And then I talk to them and they express a view to me that's like, yeah, you are a feminist. Yeah. But it's like, feminist is a bad word. Or a dirty word, or you don't want to be labelled it, or because I think there's been this kind of I would say misunderstanding and misinformation that we've had for so many years. This idea that every feminist, that feminism is about hating men, which it's not. And I think there's this idea of like extreme feminists. Oh, they don't shave their legs, they burn their bras, they do things, and that's why I think lots of women want to distance themselves or not identify as a feminist, loud and proud.
But I also think mainstream feminism doesn't represent the vast majority of females. So, for example, I identify as an intersectional feminist, and that only came about within the third wave of feminism. So the first two waves of feminism
for white middle class
women. Absolutely. So you have your suffragists, and then you have your suffragettes. Yeah. It was only the third wave of feminism that actually was a little bit more diverse and took into account your ethnicity, your nationality, disability, orientation, etc.
And the differences women may face based on their different various markers. ethnic markers,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, if we talk about feminism in general, we're looking at how you discriminate based on your gender. But we know that there are individuals where there's a number of factors that make up their identity, their ethnicity, their orientation, disability, etc. They operate together to cause, to exacerbate inequality, right? Yeah. So I think that's also an issue, because mainstream feminism does not reflect the vast majority of the UK society.
Yeah. It's this word intersectionality, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So, like you're saying, in your opinion, mainstream feminism isn't intersectional.
I'm saying, historically speaking, it was not intersectional. Okay. So the first wave and second wave were not intersectional. They very much focused on legal reform, political reform, etc. They took into account the experiences of a white middle class female and then a white working class female. Whereas now we're starting to look a little bit more at diversity and a range of different females. So I'm an intersectional feminist because I think there's a range of factors that make up an individual's identity, and that can either hinder your life chances or in some cases can act as a privilege.
I am a feminist. And if you want to talk about what kind of feminist I am, ask me. Because I'm also, I am an intersectional feminist, I'm a liberal feminist, but I'm not going to start adding 3, 4, 5 words to it. I'm just a feminist, and if you want to discuss what kind of feminist I am, we'll talk. I think there's space for everyone in the feminism movement. I don't think we should be denying anyone from the movement, and people, it's a very personal thing. Feminism, there's no right way to be a feminist. You do your own thing, and as long as you're for the movement and trying to build up women, that's what I'm about.
I mean, there is one big aim, isn't there? So regardless of what type of feminist you are, if you're a feminist, there's one big aim which is
equality for women. Just from some research, like the word feminist itself, actually there's a lot of confusion around it still. I think we were talking about seeing as a bad word, people don't want to identify. Even as early as it was first used, in its first use, there was still a lot of confusion about what it actually meant. Did it mean the emancipation of women? Was it about reform? Was it about looking at women's day-to-day life and how they might face inequalities? And I think there's still a lot of that today. Because the fact that there are different feminist groups are great, but I think there's still a lack of understanding, I think, sometimes about what the term actually means. And I think it's okay. It doesn't have to mean the same thing.
Absolutely.
That's why you have different types of feminists who focus on different issues, because it's got to fit you.
Absolutely.
Not that you don't
the
care
thing
about
is,
the rights
but
of all
also
women.
you can't just say women are one homogenous group. They're not all the same. They have their own unique experiences.
Absolutely.
So, for example, my experiences are very different to a white working class female. My experiences are also very different to a black working class female. In America, they use a really controversial term. It's called model minority. So they call Asians a model minority. So what that means is these Asians, so Far East Asians and South Asians, are seen as good immigrants.
They care about education.
Your law-abiding citizens.
They're underrepresented in the criminal justice system.
Absolutely. So they're your good immigrants. So then their experiences are going to be very different to a Hispanic female or a black female, because they're not seen as the model minority. So that's why I think with feminism, it's not accurate to say they all face one issue, that being the gender. That's not correct. They face a number of issues based on the factors that make up their identity.
Feminism is a movement, in my opinion. And so I'm for the movement, so that's why I identify as a feminist, but I know there might be other people that are for the movement but might not identify as a feminist, and I think words are triggering. I think the word feminist is a trigger word for lots of people. It kind of there's a certain level of emotion that you might feel when you hear the word. Okay.
I mean, we were talking about whether or not I am. Just you saying that, it's interesting because it's not triggering for me, but it's not something I necessarily shout loud and proud about. But that doesn't mean I don't care about them. What's the difference between a movement and an organisation?
So, for me, a movement is a cause. There's a bigger picture. What are we fighting for? We're fighting for equal access to opportunities. An organisation, there's no feminism. There's no CEO of feminism. There's no headquarters for feminism.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Who do I contact if I want to fund feminism?
Yeah.
You know?
Also, a movement is ongoing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, whereas an organisation really can just be open for a fixed amount of time and doesn't necessarily need to thrive and survive. Where I think a movement, generally speaking, is as strong as its members, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why you have so many different waves of feminism and different types of feminism,
Yeah.
because it's an ongoing movement.
Yeah. And constantly changing.
Absolutely.
We still have a lot of sexism in the media. We still tend to focus on different things when we're talking about women and when we're talking about men in the media. So if I think of Theresa May, who was our previous Prime Minister, I've never ever seen a man, like a Prime Minister that was a man. I've never seen their shoes in the newspaper or like in a magazine or anything.
Mm-hmm.
But I used to see her shoes commented on and reported on like it was a news item, like regularly.
Yeah. And essentially that's an item of clothing, isn't it? And
yes.
it almost goes back to what we know about what women are seen as valuable for. It's like the fashion, etc. And it comes back to the Battle of the Legs, which was plastered all, in all national newspapers, and it was an actual thing. And it's like, why are we looking at their legs when they were there to talk about something else?
But the issue is women have always been mocked in society. So if we go back to the actual term suffragette, that was created by a British reporter working for the Daily Mail.
Yeah.
So he called the suffragists, he called the movement a suffragette because he was trying to minimise the movement. He was mocking the movement. But the joke's on him because females embraced the term.
Yeah.
And then they were very successful in doing it.
It's the exact same as the word ledette that's used now.
Yes, absolutely.
Adding that et to, words, it's meant to be a mockery.
Yeah.
It is. And also it's supposed to stop women from wanting to identify as suffragettes. That was the whole reason behind it.
It's a negative thing, isn't it? If you're called a ladette, that's not a good thing.
No, it's a derogatory term.
No,
yeah,
it is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, like, talking about the media again, Jacinda Ardern, the New Zealand Prime Minister, I saw a clip, and I'll try and find the link and put it like in the info section. So she's pregnant at the time, and she's being interviewed on like some news channel in New Zealand, and the male presenter asks her, what are you going to do? Are you going to take maternity leave? Because, you've got a lot of work to be doing. You're our Prime Minister.
Yeah.
And she just looks at him and she's like, it's 2017. The fact that you just asked me that question is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I'm a mother. Basically, she's like so annoyed and outraged at the fact that he's even asked her that question. It's like, what did you expect her to do, mate? She needs to deliver a baby. Exactly. What do you want her to do? You want her to like deliver in the parliament? I don't,
Yeah.
So just little things like that I feel sometimes people don't even think about.
Yeah.
Why would it even cross your mind to ask that question? Because shouldn't the answer just be so obvious?
Yeah. So when did you guys first hear about the term feminism?
Good question. I don't think I heard about it until I was in university.
So it was never taught in school?
I don't remember anyone. It might have been mentioned.
But it obviously wasn't that big.
But
it obviously wasn't that big for you to remember, right?
Yeah. No.
When did you hear about it?
I think because I picked GCSE sociology, I definitely remember learning about feminism as a movement because that's part of the perspectives. That's one of it's part of the curriculum specification. I don't remember learning about it anywhere else.
Yeah. I learned about feminism. I don't think it was called feminism. I think it was called women's suffrage. I learnt about it in history, but it was taught. I have issues with how it was taught because it was taught very much like this is the suffragist movement, this is the suffragette movement, this is Emily Davidson, and she threw herself in front of the king's horse. It was very radical for 14-year-old me to learn about. I still identified with it because I thought they were quite cool. So I still definitely identified with the movement. And I knew it would affect me, but I just think I think it can be taught a little bit better. Like I think in sociology they do a good job.
They did a really good job because you learn about the waves of feminism. You also learn about the different types of feminism. And remember, sociology is constantly being updated. The specification because it's quite a new subject, new discipline. So I think they definitely did it justice for sure.
So every child that takes sociology GCSE or A level will every child learn about feminism?
Absolutely, historically as well, the movement, the first wave, second wave, third wave, absolutely. And they may do a massive essay question on it as well. So they have a really good understanding of it. And I'd say sociology does it justice.
I agree.
And they also...
We're sociology teachers, by the way.
Yeah, because it's a critical subject, they also look at it critically by looking at the other side of it. So what are counter movements, and how do they matter in relation to feminism? So I think
so do you guys think it should be taught in school? Because the issue is sociology is an optional subject. So everyone learning about feminism and sociology, they've chosen the subject, right?
I think, look, teaching feminism, because sociology does a great job of teaching feminism and looking at the inequalities of women, but that's the nature of the subject.
Absolutely.
Are we looking at teaching about feminist movements or teaching girls and boys about the inequalities girls face? Because I think those two are different things. I think we should teach about the inequalities that girls face, direct examples, and because we're teaching the future generation, I think they should be able to discuss policy. And girls, what do they want to see in the future? How do they want to feel?
When we're talking about International Women's Day in March, you kind of touch on it, right? To raise awareness about the rights of women, and maybe you might highlight a few statistics, talk about inspirational women, that kind of thing. So in terms of should it be taught, I think lots of things should be taught in school, but I think a lot of it is to do with individual teachers and you bringing it to your classroom. Because if I'm a French teacher, I'm a languages teacher, it doesn't come up in the curriculum. So that would be up to me to introduce that in my classroom. Maybe I might find an article in the language that I find interesting and then get my students to read it, and then we talk about it.
The only issue with that is you're going to have a few teachers that do that, right?
And
and there's obviously some people that are not feminist, they're anti-feminist. So if they then bring in their view, it's problematic. Whereas I think if it's taught in, let's say, citizenship or PHSC or whatever, or even if a form tutor teaches it, at least you've got a uniform policy of this is what you're going to teach.
But then are we telling people how to think?
No, but if you teach it from a critical point of view, so this is, but I'm not saying that we should say all females need to be feminists or all males need to be feminists. I'm just saying that maybe we need to learn a little bit more about the waves, and then we can learn about the types of feminists, and we can learn about counter movements. And then it's up to you whether or not you identify.
What subject is that going to happen in?
That's the thing. But I think it's important for it to be taught.
I think it's important to raise awareness about it in schools. Because having organised events or little things for International Women's Day, when we are asked, so one of the things that I've done is I've asked people to talk about women that they find inspiring. And do you know how hard it was to get people to not talk about their mum?
Which we love. We do love.
We all love our mums. Our mums are great, but I don't want to hear 60 children on a video telling me that they find their mum inspiring. Because if I ask a child, can you tell me about some inspirational men? Every child will talk about. Some of them will talk about their dad, but they'll say politicians, sportsmen, singers.
But is that to do with underrepresentation? They're not as visible, maybe, so they don't know who. They're not as well read on inspirational women because we don't hear about them as much.
There's this thing that we should think that our mums are inspirational, which they are. But it's like, you can't be like that.
That's so interesting.
That the only inspirational woman is your mum. And it's like, okay, let's start introducing our children to other women that are inspirational.
Absolutely.
I love Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. That's who I
love Angela Davis.
Halima Aden, because I'm Somali, and she's also done a great job representing Islamic and modest beauty in the fashion world. I think it doesn't always have to be about academics as well.
Exactly.
It can be mixed with both.
I'm not saying to the kids, the person you choose has to be a feminist or has to be loud and proud. No, we're just saying pick a woman that inspires you. And that was very difficult.
But they need to be given a space where they can discover in school inspirational women.
That's the thing, right? Because if they don't have a space to discover who their inspiration is, if they're not doing it in school, they're not doing it at home, where are they getting it from? That's the problem. That's why I think it's really important for it to be taught at school. But of course it needs to be critical as well. We're not telling people how to think. We're not doing that at all. We're just saying, this is a movement, learn a little bit more about it. because it's going to impact you.
Question: what do you guys think about counter movements? Because there are men now who say that as a result of feminist movements, they faded into the background, and they actually feel that they have less power now, and they are the ones who need a movement to represent them. What do you guys think about that?
In regards to counter movements, I'm not entirely sure I agree, and that's because feminism is all about the equality, politically, socially, economically, etc. So I don't know how of both genders, absolutely, or all genders, but I don't know how that can impact males, because it's not saying we want males to be subordinate to female.
Oh, you're saying negatively impacts.
Yeah,
so you don't see why that's a byproduct that then means men.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because women are not trying to be superior than men.
Yeah.
We're just trying to be equal. So I'm not too sure how the counter movement.
Do you think that that's the confusion that's caused on purpose? That women's rights means men by default
on the back foot?
Yeah, on the back foot. I think that's
how some men see it. Yeah. I think that's how. And I think if you were to ask a man that doesn't believe in feminism or doesn't support the movement, okay, would you have liked to been born a woman?
Yeah.
I don't know. What would you say?
But because he's seeing it from a male's point of view, he might say yes or no, but he doesn't truly understand the discrimination women face. So even if he was to say yes or no, I mean, it makes no difference, does it?
I think let everyone have their opinions. Let's everybody bring them to the table. Let's talk. Let's discuss. Let's debate. And we can have a conversation about it. I'm not into shutting down people because they have a different opinion to me, but I'm into having a conversation. I think it's damaging to always shut down other people and not give them a platform. That might be controversial to some, but I think if you give them a platform, then the thing can be discussed. Whatever the issue is, it can be discussed and you can have a conversation. Because I think that's what leads to change, to real change. Having conversations, and you might say something that gets somebody to think, or they might say something that gets you to think, and then you might have a slight change in your attitude, or think about it in a different way. Because
but also feminists are allies, right? We're not going against men, and we would hope that men are allies as well. And we know that there are some issues that men face in society. Toxic masculinity, we know when it comes to suicide rates, men are more likely to commit suicide. So we know there are real issues that
and that's
males
also
face.
because of some of the gender, the narratives about what it means to be masculine, that men feel
that they patriarchy is also detrimental to men to a certain degree.
Because it's about the alpha male, the strong male, the assertive male, the powerful male, and it's about men not talking about their feelings or not really being open to being emotional. So we're not saying don't be sympathetic to men who have an issue as well. And what you were saying, bring it to the table. Let's all have a discussion. I think if women are going to ask for the space to talk about their issues, that means all people get the space to talk about their issues, men or otherwise.
Exactly. Come, let's talk.
Let's talk about it. What do you guys think, just really quickly, about when we look at girls and this narrative of women tearing each other down? Do you think that is a tactic that's used to make women feel as if they can't support other women, or they're not supporting other women, therefore they've got no rights to talk on female equality? So you're going online tearing other women down, you've got negative things to say about other sisters of yours, etc. Do you think that's a narrative that's used to divide and take away from the movement and say, well, how can you support, you're not supporting women, how can you look for equality?
That, for me, that phrase, women tearing each other down, is the feminism equivalent of black on black crime. That's what it is to me. To me, black on black crime is a myth. Because we never think of white people killing each other and start calling it white on white crime.
Or Asian on Asian crime.
And we never, have you ever heard of this thing of men tearing each other down? No. So that's a very simple issue for me.
I absolutely agree.
So you're saying that doesn't take away from the movement? That's just human
nature.
No, I feel like some women may tear other women down, but that's a personality and it's a human trait.
But just like some men might do it, but we don't call it men tearing each other down. It's just
your
individual trait.
No, it comes from this stereotype of women being bitchy. That's what it comes from, which I don't buy into at all. People are people.
Yes.
Humans are humans. We are judgmental by nature, I think.
And gossipy.
I think.
But that's an individual trait. an individual has, right? Regardless of your gender, it could be a male that has that trait or a female that has that trait.
Yeah.
You can't say that all females are bitchy.
So
that's ridiculous.
Absolutely. So what we're saying is that doesn't take away from women wanting equality, because they are because a woman may troll another woman online doesn't necessarily mean that, you know, women can't campaign for equality.
I think that as personally, I try to really go against that instinct to judge other women. I really try, because I feel like it's a thing that's really ingrained in us, you know.
Yes.
I really try not to do it. Obviously I fail every day. But for instance, there's certain words and that I will not ever use to describe a woman. I will never call a woman a slut, and that word is not in my vocabulary. Yeah. Just because personally I think it's damaging. Absolutely. And I don't like the image that it creates or the stereotype that it perpetuates. So just personally, I have little things that I do to try and like build women up
and empower them.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, so any final words?
I think we've come a long way in terms of feminism. If we look at the first wave to where we are now, I think we have come a long way, but I think there's a lot more progress that needs to be done. So we're not all the way there yet. Okay, we could talk about figures and statistics in terms of domestic violence, in terms of equal pay, etc. So we're not all the way there, but we're getting there, baby steps.
Yeah, exactly. We have made steps in the right direction. For instance, now in the UK we've got more female MPs, the most we've ever had. So that's a good thing, I think, because it's more representation.
Yeah.
So I think we have come a long way. I'm really interested in how we speak about women to our students as teachers, the stereotypes we are perpetuating in the language we use in the classroom, what pictures we're using in the classroom. So yeah, let's build up everyone, and let's kind of raise awareness about the inequalities that women do face.
Yeah, I think for me it's just being aware that not every woman who directly doesn't say that they're a feminist doesn't care about the cause.
Yeah.
And I think that that's really important as well, because you know, I think sometimes we can get a bit wrapped up in the language, although I do think it's important for movements that the people of that movement call themselves, there's a tying in phrase that identifies them. So I definitely think that there needs to be more use of the word feminism, but also people who are not all the way there with using it, just being a little bit kinder on them, because it doesn't necessarily mean that they're not feminists or for the equality of women. Yeah. We'd like to hear your thoughts.
Let us know what you think, guys. Are you a feminist? Do you identify? If so, which type?
Yeah. Tell us also who are the women that inspire you in the comments. Are you a feminist? What do you think of the word?